we're excited about the activities that have been taking place so far, the workshops we've had, the engagement that we're doing, and the people that are connecting. This week's workshop is another in the series of what we're doing in terms of providing you real relevant content in terms of how to really accelerate your startup and build your business for your entrepreneurship journey. This week's workshop is going to be really led by a dynamic HR leader who's going to share with you how to build teams, how to develop your culture, and how to make your organization success. We always look for capital, but the other important capital required for any type of business to be success is that human capital. So we're going to be focused on that tonight. But before we get into that, a couple of housekeepings. We want everybody to know that probably by tomorrow close of business, you'll be receiving an email with details laying out the pitch competition. We've had a lot of inquiries. The date, of course, is July 8th. Applications will open up next week. And the notification that you'll be receiving will announce all the guidelines for participation. We're real excited about it. There's going to be some interesting new developments that we've added to it that we think you're going to be pleased with. Again, our apologies for the delayed notice. We wanted to get it out earlier this week, but some new developments that were favorable we needed to think through. So we're excited about it, and you'll be receiving more information about that by the close of business tomorrow. Also, too, as we do every week, we ask your opinion about something relevant that we feel is important, that we need to know and understand about what's happening in the startup community here locally, as well as within the region. And we do this by asking you to complete our poll. So Emily, tonight's poll question is, how has your startup/business been funded to date? How has your startup/business been funded to date? Please complete the poll. We need that data. You have several answers, and we'll be giving you feedback on this by the end of all the polls by the end of the program. So without any further ado, unless anyone has any questions directed for me, I would like to introduce tonight's facilitator for tonight's workshop. Is it helpful with Rebecca Clark? Helpful if we could choose more than one, FYI. Okay. Going back to the poll. Thank you for that, Rebecca. Karla Hill. Karla is a seasoned HR leader. She'll explain her background to you, but she's a dynamic person. She came to us through SBA SCORE. If you're not familiar with SCORE, you need to. Great resource for small business here across the country. SCORE is actually a national program. Karla is one of the consultants for SCORE. So we're happy to have her here tonight to lead us into our discussion about how to effectively build teams and build culture as we look to grow these dynamic organizations as startups. So at this point in time, it's my pleasure to introduce to the group tonight, Karla Hill. Karla?
Thank you, Tom. Thanks again for the invitation. I want to thank Emily and Amanda for all the support. I'm very excited about being here. I'm going to go right into it. Thank you so much. Everything is just set up. I mean, it's a great job just in terms of the PowerPoint. Everything is wonderful. So I'm going to start my presentation. So just introducing myself, just like Tom said. So the topic for today is establishing your team and building your culture. And I want to start with a story. Most of us know Colonel Sanders, right? He was he's the face of Kentucky Fried Chicken. But as a HR person, a lot of times what I look at is personalities and stories. I love biographies. Colonel Sanders was a 6th grade dropout. He joined the Army. He was fired several times from jobs for not following orders. I believe that he was wired to be an entrepreneur. But he didn't find that out until age 65. Could you believe it? He did not start Kentucky Fried Chicken until he was 65 years old. Now, to this day, in 2018, there were over 22,000 restaurants, right? Just imagine if he knew his career design earlier. So again, if you know your personality, your interests, your skills, your values, what would you do with that extra time? So for those of you that are interested in that story, it's a very detailed story on YouTube, and it's called He Failed 1,000 Times on YouTube. So what I want to do is start with my story. I'm going to go back to this. So that's just a montage of me. That's my family up in the right of for startups. He did not own, his estate does not own the naming rights. So just as business owners, not, I'm preaching to the choir because you're all here being educated, but all those nuances in terms of building a business. So his estate does not get all of that money. And that was just something I was listening to in the background as he was talking to his economics professor. My husband is in real estate. I work with him in real estate with investors, and I've supported him as an agent as well. Multiple streams. And my oldest son is a graduate of Georgetown University, very active in government relations. Very proud of my family. I have the Costa Rica sign up there, so I'm a daughter of an immigrant. And that's part of my story. When I think about my mother and my grandmother who came from Costa Rica, and my grandmother started as a maid in New York City and at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. And I just think that she was able to build 2 houses in Limon, Costa Rica, where my uncle and my cousins live to this day. And I just think that's part of who I am, right? In terms of just that work ethic. And to the right, that's a picture of my dad. My dad passed away, but he was an entrepreneur. He owned a couple of parking lots along with my uncles back in the day in New York City. And he could never work for anyone. I mean, he just never could work for anyone. And I think, a lot of times with, I'm not sure how many people are either first generation New Yorker. And a lot of times what entrepreneurs we have to work so hard, you want your offspring to, just get the education, get the credentials, right? But there's a cap to those credentials as well, right? So I'm very active. I love mentoring. The lower left-hand corner, I'm on the Society for Human Resources Management in terms of their board, and Prospanica, which used to be called the Hispanic MBAs. And New York, I think New York, just that grit and that, I think that's formed me as well. So it's really important to know ourselves. And just in terms of my story, so I'm the principal and owner of GPS Career and Business Strategies, providing career and HR services to individuals and small businesses. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a native New Yorker, daughter of an immigrant and an entrepreneur. I have a bachelor's degree in public administration and minored in human resources at Baruch College, part of City University, New York. I have a master's degree from Chestnut Hill College. I'm also an adjunct professor at Eastern. I have my 9 to 5, 30 in September it'll be 32 years of human resources management experience in government. I've probably supervised over 100 people, either directly or through subordinate supervisors. And my focus has been on labor relations, recruitment, career development, payroll, among other responsibilities. And, I have certifications from the Society for Human Resources Management, as well as the Human Resources Certification Institute, board member at Prospanica, and also at Blacks United in Leading Technology, an international firm, just ensuring that those gaps for people of color are closed in technology. The workshop goals for today, again, just like as the title says, establishing your optimum team and culture, identify your values and build a common vision for your organization. And Tom alluded to this when he opened up, right? I know with a lot of startups, you think about, how am I going to get that money? And I really believe what the most important asset is you, right? So again, kudos to you for building that. What I've seen being in different rooms in different spaces, corporate, government, and entrepreneurs, a lot of times entrepreneurs are so driven to work on the operation, they neglect working on themselves. In Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the 7th habit is sharpening the saw, meaning us, right? Investing in yourself and learning. And what I share with people, I was hiring human resources people, and I do consultants. I got my master's in 2003. I'm much more likely to hire someone that had a certification, because the certifications, whether it's a CPA or lawyers, doctors, HR people, we are required to, realtors required to make sure that we continue our education, 60 hours of continuing education every 3 years. So that's proven that I sharpen my saw. A master's degree, what happens is it just starts in 2003. It's completely different now, right? Like in government, we have what we call a recency clause when we do our job descriptions, where if you're an automotive maintenance technician or a technologist, your degree, if your degree is older than 5 years, it's obsolete, right? It's like a car. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it's depreciating. So just think about that. And a lot of people say, oh, oh, Karla, I'm good. I'm just staying the same. Once you make the decision and you say, I'm good, you're declining. It's no staying the same. It's either you're improving or you're declining, right? So just always be aware, craft out time to invest in yourself and just expand your mind, right? I'm in a coaching certification program now. And one of the things, just in terms of just breakthroughs, like once you break through, it's hard to dial it back in terms of our mind, right? Expanding. Like once you have an idea, you're gonna move forward as opposed to back. So just always think about that, right? And the business owner leads all facets of their business, and attention to people and culture is required at all stages. I mean, most of you now are in startups. You might be in the seed phase, growth, but always you have to be retooling. Now, this is a cute little cartoon that I saw, and this audience, I would think, would really understand it, right? It's 2 people. What's your dream job, right? And then somebody says, well, why would I dream of labor, right? Why would I want to work for somebody? And then there's this awkward silence, and the other person walks away and says, where are you going? To rethink my life, right? That's like your dream job, but what you are doing is recrafting. You might have a dream for creating jobs for others, but you know right now that one of the things that you really want to do is create your entity, which you have. Now, what I've seen is nothing changes until you decide for it to, right? So right now, I want you to evaluate your business with 1 being completely dissatisfied and 10 being completely satisfied. And again, if you have notes or take notes on your phone, just make note of that, where you are right now. What do you really want? And think about, what do you really want in your life, your business, or your career? What does your vision for your ideal life look like a year from now? Start visioning that, right? A lot of times we just get focused on what's right in front of us. What does your business look like? Who are the people you are working with? What kind of transformation are they having? What are your finances? What is the income? Think about that. Now, it's now June 3rd, 2022, right? How do you start your day? Are you all stressed out? Are you calling an assistant? Think about what you want that to look like. What other significant changes you made in the last year? Who do you need to become to make that vision a reality? A lot of times people like, oh, I can't find good people. I can't, like, okay, what are you doing to attract them? Right. And I'm at, that's why I'm always talking about improving, right? You are the most valuable resource to your business. Please, again, just invest in yourself. Having a business is not easy. So documenting your responses to the questions that I asked will help you craft your vision and help you remember your why, right? If you see a legacy, if you see a family compound, if you see your business being just international, just remember the why, because we get absorbed in the detail. Now, if you know who you are, you can create a business by design as opposed to default, where if you're working for someone else, you're basically subject to their rules. One of the advantages of being having your own business is you get to design it, but that's a responsibility as well. So a vision statement describes the way you envision your business. As such, it should communicate that dream to your employees and customers in an inspirational manner. Why would somebody want to join you? Right? People are attracted to the leaders. We've done exit interviews, and people usually they leave, they might say something else, but in terms of the data, they leave people. They don't usually leave jobs, right? So a vision statement should be reviewed continuously to ensure it is still aligned with the way you see your company. Harley Davidson has a vision statement that focuses on keeping its brand internationally known and valued, using the combined power of its stakeholders and employees to drive value and innovation. So it's your employees, it's your customers, it's your suppliers, it's all of your stakeholders when you're thinking about this statement. Harley Davidson statement is an action-oriented international company, a leader in its commitment to continuously improve our mutually beneficial relationships with stakeholders, meaning they're identifying all their stakeholders, their customers, their suppliers, their employees, their shareholders, government, and society. We're only as strong as our weakest link. So if you're not paying attention to something, and it's a lot, that's why owning a business is not easy. I saw a stat where there's about 582 million businesses worldwide. 22% of those businesses fail in the first year, right? And when you see vision statements and mission statements, you're like, oh, I just need to get working, get action. So why do the successful companies all have vision and mission statements, right? There's a reason.
Hey,
So developing.
Karla,
Yes.
can I make a comment, quick
Yes,
observation
please.
here?
Please.
One of the things that's really very interesting about this, we all know the Harley Davidson brand.
Oh.
And Harley Davidson is synonymous with motorcycles, has been since its founding. And interesting, that vision statement doesn't say anything about motorcycles, doesn't say anything about riding, it doesn't say anything about what we normally associate Harley Davidson with. But what it does say, you know, in a very holistic way, that what's important is employees, customers, shareholders, vendors, and partners. And I just think that was something that was worth, pulling out, in terms of the observation about it as a company and how it has defined its vision statement for the organization.
And just, what I see thank you, for bringing up that point. And I think just seeing some Harley Davidson people that they may not have gotten it, but they think they've thought about it. Usually it might be males in their 40s, 50s. They talk about freedom. Oh, I need to ride, so it means so much more, right? That people are attracted to. So again, thank you. Any other comments? Again, I want it to be as interactive as possible, get through the content, but I think and that's why I left you with some questions. And this is something that you're thinking, not just for your business, but think about when you bring on a new service line, a new product line. These are the things that you're thinking about. A lot of people will do their business plan and they'll put it on the shelf, right? But every time you're doing something new, you want to think about the impact, right? It's just like if you're a family and you add someone's expecting a baby, right? The couple's expecting, that does change things. So it's like thinking about how things are going to be changed. right? Anything that you're about to birth, meaning a company, a product, this is what you want to be thinking about. So a vision is a picture of your organization's desired future expressed in a way that resonates with all members of the organization. The vision is shared with employees, customers, shareholders, vendors, and candidates for employment. So thinking, some of you may not have employees now, right? But it's really starting to think about that now, because there is a race for talent. It's very competitive. And I know some of you are in what we call like hard to fill, hard to recruit, where those skills are very, very high in demand. So how do you attract that talent? And if you're the employee, you're going to go somewhere where you want to go, right? What is the value added proposition that you bring to attract that talent to you? And some of us, I mean, you, depending on how big you want to build your business, it's going to be, it's, you know, it's a make or break in terms of the employees that you attract to it. So again, that vision statement creates a shared meaning about what your organization wants to become, right? You may not be there yet, but people are bought into, hey, they're going in the right direction. I want to follow him. I want to follow her, right? Determining your vision is an early component in corporate or organizational strategic planning. And that's like when people think of, let me just ask, when you think of human resources, what do you think of? Typically, when you hear, oh, human resources, what does that mean? Anybody can come off mute or put in the chat.
I think of benefits and your benefits and hiring.
Exactly. And Lola, that's where most people think, because I mean, usually you're on that side of receiving those benefits or receiving the pay, right? But in the back end, this is what human resources really does in terms of partnering with your CEO, with the founder. And I talk about my 32 years. I had like, I mean, I had one exceptional CEO or commissioner. He just understood very early that he needed to have HR at the table for the things that he wanted to implement. And I see the difference, because most people don't know what they don't know, right? So they go in, they want, but quite honestly, you know, some of you are in technology, the processing oriented functions of HR, a lot of that can be handled via, you know, you've heard of ADP, Paycor, there's processing. And in some cases, machines, they do work better than people because there's not duplication of errors. But the strategy, I want you to really think about opening your mind to partnering with that human resources, which includes yourself, including training and employees, of expanding and building the infrastructure of your business.
So would you suggest, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Lola.
Yes.
Would you suggest a founder sit down with an HR specialist as they're, you know, creating their infrastructure for their HR in the kind of infancy stage, or when should they start to have those conversations with HR, to bring on an HR personnel to help them build out their infrastructure?
I think it's important to interview the HR. That's part of the reason that we're presenting this as well, because if you have, you know, HR specialists that's just concentrating on processing, that's not exactly what you need, right? It depends on what stage of your business at, right? But in terms of, if you're talking with HR strategist now, right, that will include a specialist, but these are some of the questions that you're asking because you want to build that culture, right? And that might be looked at as softer, right? They call soft skills, but those are hard skills in terms of, because sometimes you can't put your fingers on it, but it's developing that. So it's your mindset, and it really going towards reflecting who you want to be and who you want your organization to be. And that's why it's difficult, especially a lot of times business leaders tend to be your accountants, your technologists, and they think very linear, right? But in terms of partnering with someone that's more strategic, that moves the organization to that next level. But a lot of times accountants and technologists tend to say, I just want the numbers, I just want the bottom line, but it's going to be linear. You're looking for exponential growth. You're not looking for 1+1, right? You're looking for three cubed or 3 squared, right? So it's a different level of thinking. And, you know, again, kudos to Tom for seeing that that's the difference, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple responses in the chat. Precious pointed out HR as people operations. Zave wrote that I have observed that often a company or nonprofit corporate culture is a manifestation of the character and personality of its leader or leadership team. If you want to adjust, repair, or change a culture, you need to change the outlook of the leader. Hakeem wrote, management of human talent to access potential and directing it into beneficial actions. So your response to those comments?
Thank you. So that's exactly right. Anything that's new, and you know, when people say, oh, Karla, I'm going for an interview, I hope I get the job. But the interview is also for the employee, right?
Yeah.
Any place that I'm going, I want to see what the beliefs are of that leader. If they're looking at HR as more transactional, it may not be a fit because I'm more excited about the expansion, right? And anything that I want, any type of new initiative, if you don't have the buy-in from the commissioner or the CEO, it's not going to go anywhere. Most people will follow the leader. A lot of people are like, oh, that's HR, that's HR. They're not following HR. They're following the leader. So like diversity, you know, what's like really hot right now, right, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. But if the CEO is doing it to check the box, it's not going anywhere, right? And if they want to do it also just, oh, kumbaya, and that's why a lot of times you'll see it in human resources. But from a business perspective, the CEOs that understand if you respect other cultures and you really are welcoming, you build another loyal market. That's so, because a lot of times CEOs are made to make money. I mean, because they have that responsibility for their shareholders or their investors. So they might want to have a warm, fuzzy feeling inside, but it really does need to relate to making money as well, right? So it's really, that's why it's so important to see what you believe first, because you can't fool people. It's really what you believe. Right. So since we're talking to leaders here, you're setting that tone when you're like, oh, they no, now it's you. You have the responsibility to set that tone, set that environment, set that culture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it takes work. It does take work.
Yeah. We have another question from Zave. Is HR part of the future, part of growth, or just the cleanup crew?
It depends how you look at it, right? What I've learned over the years, how people look at things, they're right. So I view it as part of growth. If you have the opportunity now to understand that if you design and you continue to learn, that is part of growth. If you see it as part of the cleanup crew, then it'll just be transactional and processing. And just like I said before, a lot of human resources tasks that people look at because technology is great with lots of data. So if you have benefits and you have 1,000 people that get the same sort of benefits, or you have 1,000 people that get paid the same way, use a machine. But that's not what HR strategy does. This is what we're talking about in terms of what is that culture? What is that setting? So, but that's you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's you working with, and maybe you identify someone to work with to kind of push you into learning those things. And that's really one of the purpose right now, you know, like Tom said, with an hour presentation, you're not going to learn every little thing. It's about exposure. Say, hey, I want to learn more, right? But it's really giving you the bullets in terms of what you should be looking at and the importance of building that vision, that mission, and that culture so you can attract the talent to move to the next level in your business. So I hope that does answer your question, just in terms, is it the cleanup crew? If you view it as the cleanup crew, it will be, and that's going to be the return on your investment.
Can I
Right?
ask?
Yes, Lola.
Take up too much time, but just
No, go ahead, please.
So in your experience, have you found that most founders or CEOs, they tend to be less concerned about, you know, creating that vision, creating that culture, and they're more, you know, they're more focused on the transactional part of the HR process? And how do you, like, I guess I'm trying to understand, like, what is the current climate amongst HRs? Because I just, from my own personal experience, it just seems like most HRs are, or companies are, they're focusing mostly on the transactional part of it and not necessarily building out that culture. And that was like one of the reasons that I was attracted to entrepreneurship, because I wanted to create my own working culture that was very different from some of the cultures that I've come out of. So I just want to get a sense from you, what has been your experience?
I think that my answer is most new businesses, most people, and most current businesses are focused more on the transactional in terms of human resources. Most innovative people that are like in startup and science center are looking for more, like Tom, bringing you to the next level.
Okay.
The very successful ones that are going to partner and understand that it's more than transactional will increase their chances of success.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
You're in the right place, Lola. Good for you.
Hi, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Please.
So I feel like I'm not even ready for this conversation yet. I feel like I need to take a couple steps back. So, you know, like last week we were talking about like business formation, and maybe you don't need to even go into the business formation while you're still trying to work out your, you know, what it is that you're doing and things like that. And I bring that up because as a startup program where a lot of us have a concept that we're working through, we haven't even really launched yet. And you know, I am starting a tech company and I'm a non-technical founder. So I need to bring in tech people to help me. And I have met people that are great and we vibe and you know, probably culturally it made sense, but they didn't produce what I need them to produce. Right. So now I need them to produce. So like, I guess my question is like, where does this start and how do you start it from the beginning where there's no culture, right? Like there's no company to even form a culture around. You're just trying to build it, but you don't want to bring people on and get so far gone that it's like now you're cleaning up.
Exactly, Monique. And you're in the planning phase now, right? And it is documenting and knowing what you're looking for. And it's hard. Like when you say, oh, I need them to produce. I mean, I'm gonna give you honest feedback. When people are just looked at as I need them to produce, as opposed to what value are you bringing to them? Why would they want to come work for you as opposed to someplace that's going to value their development? Also, I understand what you're saying, right? But that's what makes it more difficult. And that's why I think some businesses fail. And that's why I see a lot of times technologists, they don't like to supervise or manage people. And that's that cartoon that I put up. Yeah, people may want to be entrepreneurs and business owners, but it's not for everyone, right? Because people are not linear. So when you are saying, I want to attract talent, we're complex, right? It's like, you could say they had everything on paper, but they were not a fit. Right? So it is more difficult. It does take time to document what type of culture that you're looking for and that time, but and you might be that person that is more process oriented. I just need to get it done. But when people feel that they're being rolled over and they're not being valued, that's picked up as well.
No, when I said I needed them to produce, I didn't mean that like I'm just looking at them to produce. What I meant was culturally they were a good fit. It seemed as though everything was fine, but when the end product was given to me, so I spent thousands of dollars building something with someone who I thought got me and it was a good fit, but what they gave me, I now have to start over again and that money is now a waste. So I mean, I don't mean that they're just a cog, but because I'm building something from the beginning, there's no company yet, it's an idea. I don't even know what the culture needs to be. I just need to get this going. And I'm trying to bring on people I can build with, but it's like I'm trying to get to know you at a time where I also need to get this built as well. So I'm just trying to figure out how to find that balance at this point, with trying to build a team that is a fit and everybody's being valued and it makes sense all the way around. But also at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a company, right? It's supposed to make money. It's supposed to be, whatever that is.
Right.
Let me
And
let me
it's,
let
go
me
ahead, Tom.
let me provide some insight there. One of the things that, as Karla pointed out very early on, and startups, small businesses often make this mistake. I've made it myself, over the years, is that we look to people based on a skill we've defined that's important, instead of looking at something that's not as tangible, but is just as important as what the terms is often used now called employee fit into an organization. Can somebody mute their mic, please? We're hearing dishes. So anyway, what happens is that when we begin to look at, really, how do we create, and build, and it doesn't matter if a person is going to come on board long term or short term, it's really about alignment. And alignment has to be from the very beginning, especially you as the founder, kind of is really setting the path. Um, I tell people this all the time. I've had the opportunity to walk in and take over several businesses over the years and turn them around. And people will ask, how did I do it? One of the things that I often see is that there's no vision and mission. I mean, sometimes success happens because you get out there, right product, right place at the right time. All of a sudden now you went from yourself to 5 people, 20 people, 25 people. And all of a sudden now you're starting to lose money or you can't break through a barrier. Common issues about not having a clear vision that allows you to really define a path for, first of all, people you begin to call your management team. And we often promote people based on skills, not necessarily based on their ability to lead. Management, effective management is really all about leadership. Having spent 6 years in the military, the focus of the military has never been about whether you're going to be infantry, whether you're going to be technical, whether you're going to be a cook. The core foundation, they start us off in the military, it's always about leadership. They train everybody to be leaders. And then from there, you go into your specialization. But that first year is built all around leadership. And so what you want to be able to do in launching any type of venture is really begin to kind of define what kind of business you want to be. What are going to be your values? What are the norms you want your organization to be? And when you begin to talk to somebody who may have a technical expertise that you need, the conversation is now, what code do you know? What's your experience? But these are my values. This is what I believe. This is where I'm going. This is what I want to build. How do you feel about that? It's having this kind of question. I believe Susan dropped a link into the chat about culture, because it's really about culture fit. Culture not necessarily, and culture as defined by values and norms of the organization, just like how we define culture in our society. And what you want to be able to do is have that kind of conversation. Because even when you begin to track investment, I've I've been brought in by investors to take over businesses where the investors and the founders have had a falling out because the founder took on the investment and there wasn't a line. The investors' motivation and values was totally different from what the founder wanted. So it is really all about how you want to build your organization as a reflection of the vision you've established for yourself, the mission you set for the entity, and how you tie everything around it, your goals, your objective, your capitalization strategy, your human resource strategy, how all those things feed up into that for you to achieve where it is you're trying to get to. So Monique, hopefully that was helpful in some way.
Yeah, I still feel like it was further down than what I'm actually looking for now, but I'll try and take from it.
Okay, fair enough.
I think, Monique, if it's starting to write that now, right, and it seems that it's far, but it's really going to play a big role. And it may not be as fast as you want it to be, but it's going to be critical, right, in terms of that vision and that mission. And a vision, describes how you view your business to your customers and stakeholders. A mission statement describes what you currently do. So even though, like you said, it might be a concept, but it's important that you write that down. It often describes what you do for who and how. Focus on your mission each day should enable you to reach your vision. A mission statement could broaden your choices and or narrow them.
And so Monique, somebody just put in the chat, your question was more about the person not doing the work, even though they were supposed to do the work?
Yes, that's what I was saying by produce. That's why I was trying to say. It wasn't about them being a cog. It was that at the end of the day, they did not produce or did not fulfill that technical expectation of it. I'm struggling to find the alignment of someone who gets the values, gets the mission, and someone who can technically meet my needs. I can find the technical person, but they're not aligning with the values and the mission. I can find the values and the mission, but I'm not finding someone who is able to technically get me to where I need to be. So that's what I was trying to see. Like, how do I at this point manage that? And I don't want to bring on somebody in the beginning who is getting me where I need to be technically, but is not a fit for my culture long term. So that's what I was struggling with. I don't want to spend too much time on me, but yes, that's what I was asking. That's what I was saying.
One of the ways you have to be able to approach that is, first of all, is your understanding about what you're defining as the end solution for the product that you're trying to build. I'm a non-technical person myself, and I've been involved in multiple technical startups where several of them I end up managing. And what's really clear is how I chose to define what it is that we want to be able to bring to market. So it goes back to what am I looking at from a commercialization strategy that's going to be what we need the product to be, whether it is to support this, provide that, or deliver X. And through that, collectively, before you even engage the person, there needs to be a conversation about milestones between how you go from point A to point Z. And within those milestones, we have to begin to agree what becomes the deliverable. I'm a firm believer of deliverables. And it doesn't matter whether you're building something, you're managing something, or you're leading something. There needs to be something that you find measurable. And it has to happen prior to you completing the project, so that you can see if it's not going the way, how do we get it back on path? And if it's not working, this person is unable, then this is the time you have to be able to minimize your losses. I mean, there's always some risk involved in any hire, any contractual relationship. There's always risk involved. And when but the question is, how do I minimize the risk? I minimize the risk by coming to a common understanding about task, timeline, and deliverables. And then we agree on how each of these are going to be measured.
I think that's an excellent response. So Monique, just real quick, and I admire you say, oh, don't spend all the time on me, but I think people, this is a common issue. So
Yeah.
do you have a, to Tom's point, do you have a written description and in terms of just performance management as well of what success does look like in the interim, not just really at the end, but along the way, the milestones that Tom is talking about? Is that in written form?
Yeah. So what actually happened was that, so I had a written agreement, I had a description, I had milestones, everything was met. What actually came into play in the end was that as a non-technical founder, I relied on the technical know-how of that person and them explaining to me what they thought was the best way to go about what I was doing, and things like that. In the end, what was produced was something that I'm now starting over again. So it wasn't that they didn't meet the deadlines and the milestones and things like that. It's really around the fact that I am a non-technical founder putting my faith in other technical people, right? To build something that I have been working on for a year and a half, and I'm struggling and it's slowing me down because I don't have that background to be like, you know what, that is not the right way to go with this project.
Have you,
I'm just,
how did this person come to you? Were they a referral?
they were a semi-referral. We met at an event that was hosted by a client of theirs. So yes.
Yeah, I've had the same problem. I think you just had a bad hire, it sounds like. And I think what I'm learning is that I have to vet people. Right now I'm not really necessarily focusing on the culture because, like you say, you're just in the building
Right.
stage. So you just need people who have technical skills. So I don't work with anybody that doesn't come referred to me, because at least I have someone to point back to and say, well, you've referred this person, someone that you trust, that that they know what they're talking about. They know that their skill set is solid. So just always try, like moving forward, just try to vet them through other people. And things like this is going to happen because that's kind of the journey. Like that's something
Very much the journey.
That I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to lose money along the way. We don't want to lose too much money now, but it's a part of the journey. And you're just learning, and then you just take your notes, and then you learn, and then you make a better decision the next time.
So thank you for that, Lola, because Monique, I was going to ask you that question. What did you learn from this experience?
So I learned that I have to have, and even going back to something Hakeem said earlier in the chat, like I learned that I need to have a team around me, even if it is not just advisors or mentors and other people who could vet, because I don't know, even if they come referred, what I've learned is that developers know what they know, and what they know, what their specialties are, what they like to build with might not always be the right tool for what you're doing. So really having someone else with the technical prowess come in and at least vet them with me or for me. Because even, when I was building my MVP, I built it in Google Data Studio, and I went on, I forget, one of those freelance sites, Upwork, to ask someone for help with just like finishing it out. And every person that applied was like, I know SQL and Java this and HTML5 and da, da, da. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what all that has to do with Data Studio. Can you help me with Data Studio? So it's just kind of I can't do everything myself is what I learned, and I need to bring in help in some way, some shape, some form.
I think that's an excellent point. Just like a team of advisors, even one or two technical subject matter experts, because that seems to be a big gap that's missing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's what I'm hearing. So just in terms of the mission statement, and some of you probably have mission statements, right? And sometimes the vision and the mission can be combined in the same statement. So Walt Disney does this, the Walt Disney Company. The mission of the Walt Disney Company is to establish, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling, reflecting the iconic brands, creative minds, and innovative technologies that make ours the world premier entertainment company, right? So they've mixed the mission and the vision together. And to Tom's point earlier, they didn't talk about parks or rides, right? They talked about what their mission is. It's much bigger, right? So, and when you go to Disney, I'm not, my husband early when our children were younger, he loved Disney. But one thing I could say about, and I went to Disney University, they had an HR university, and I went there. But when you go to any Disney type of interaction, they focus on the customer and people. It's wowing the customer, and it's no matter where you go, you can go in the Disney group, you go anywhere, right? And when you look at what they're looking at, their mission statement, it talks about improvement of communities, improvement lives, entertain, exceeding expectations, and that really filters through the organization. So if you look at the history of the company, it shows that the mission statement of this company has been consistent with the company. It's about people, right? This with the first characteristic in the mission statement of Disney. It's about people, right? They're about making money, but how they're doing it is through people. So again, the mission statement, what problem do you solve? That's why you're in business. If you're not solving a problem that somebody needs solved, then there's no demand for that, right? How do you amaze your customer? That's the end. It's like, wow, that's how you're going to get the referrals. That's how you're going to get the commitment, right? And what is your value proposition? What makes you more unique than the other person? What are you going to add value to? How are you going to wow that customer? And then the core values, right? So core values describes your beliefs and your behaviors. They're the beliefs you have that will enable you to achieve your vision. So these are the Coca-Cola United list of core values. Quality, right? We are committed to the highest quality standards in the products. Safety, they don't compromise their standards. Excellence, right? They're naming all those in terms, and they show what that means to them. Integrity is the foundation of all enduring relationships in every successful business. They'll say they'll do the right thing. I mean, they've stepped into this, controversy in Georgia, right? So they've been called out. They're one of the few organizations that have stepped up and saying what they're going to do, right? And in terms of just respect, they respect their people, they respect their associates, they respect their consumers, all of their stakeholders. So boiled down, I mean, this is one of the largest companies ever, but that's what they've written it down, right? How many of us have our values really written down? And that when we look at them, we're like, this is how I show that. These are demonstrated core values. Now, companies whose employees understand the mission and goals enjoy a 29% greater return than other firms. Watson Wyatt, that is a human resource firm that measures that type of employee satisfaction. So that's why we pour in early, like we said, human resources is benefits and payroll, but it's human capital management, beginning with you, but also with people. And the data shows that it does make a difference. US workers want their work to make a difference, but 75% do not think their company's mission statement has become the way they do business. To Tom's point, it's alignment. You might say something, right? You might even have it written down, but if you're not living it, if you're not demonstrating it, people see that, they're like, oh, that I'm out. So that's why it's important. And then, people are like, oh, I just want to get to the checklist, right? So organizational development includes that vision, that mission, the core values. then it's so HR, I gotta give my people HR stuff, right? Because that's what you're used to. But I'm saying that's not where we start. You're gonna have your policies, you're gonna have the payroll, benefits, onboarding and training, but it's the heavy lift, the foundation. You could tell some, oh, I have a piece of land out here and I'm gonna build a house. But you're decorating the rooms, but where's the foundation? Did anybody pour the concrete? Did anybody check the soil, right? So that's, if you walk away with nothing today, if you just remember, this is the foundation of your business, right? All the other stuff, there's plenty of providers for that other stuff. And that stuff has to be done. The policy development, the payroll, people need to know once they get in, you're building that. But if you don't have that infrastructure, there's going to be issues. It's going to come out later on. Then culture, right? And that's what, like, oh, I'm not even at the culture. The culture does begin with you, right? People in many workplaces talk about organizational culture, that mysterious term that characterizes the qualities of a work environment. When employees interview a prospective employee, they often consider whether the candidate is a good cultural fit. Culture is difficult to define, but you generally know when you have found an employee who appears to fit your culture. He or she just feels right. But it's even deeper than that, right? It's writing it down. The environment in your workplace is made up of the values, beliefs, attitudes, expectations, and behaviors shared by employees in your organization, from management down to entry-level workers. So how you behave, what you believe, what your attitudes are, it's filtering down. People may think that, right? But people don't like the misalignment. So you really do have to spend time thinking about yourself and how you show up for your employees. This creates, and you may not even have an employee yet, but it is spending time on yourself. This creates a culture that is unique to your business and workplace. It establishes what you do. So culture is the environment that surrounds you at work at all of the time. It is a powerful element that shapes your work enjoyment, your work relationships, and your work processes. How many people wake up, oh, I don't feel like going to that place today, right? So if you don't feel like going to that place today, that means as soon as you get there, you are watching the clock, you just want to get out. So if you want your employees to come and want to stay there and be more productive, then you have to work at that. Right? It's not something that you can see, but it's going to show when they don't like who you are or what the managers are doing, they're going to leave. Culture is, oh, is there a question?
Yeah, this is Erica.
Hi, Erica.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I have a question about this because I struggle with it. Just because of my background is in medicine, and culture can often be used as a source to weed people out that are different. You may be told that you're not a cultural fit for something, but it has really nothing to do with whether or not you have the same vision or you have the same, goals or values in terms of patient care. It really has to do with very other things. Could be demographic, could be whatever. So as now kind of coming into a situation where I'm a founder, I'm starting to try to redefine what culture is as a CEO and a founder of a company who will need to start building a team and take away that stigma that I have about it in a different context and, from my other experience. And so I guess from that standpoint, how can I encourage a new definition of what culture is in order to find people who are fit for what I'm doing? And I'm not someone who needs to be around people like, we need to feel comfortable enough to go have beers. Like, I don't really care about that. I just care that your idea of what my company is moving towards is the same, whether you do it in this way or that way, it doesn't matter. So yeah.
That's an excellent point. I would begin with writing down exactly what you said. So what does that look like to you? Does that mean that everyone has a voice? Does that mean what? So how's that demonstrated? You see, that's where the work comes in. You're like, I just know, but I don't know what you're thinking, right? So it really begins with putting down, and I share with my staff all the time. I'm like, I know what I'm thinking. I really don't know what you're thinking. So part of my environment that I set up is that people speak up, because I must say that at least once a day, because I know some people are introverted. I know, and if I say that, but then I bite somebody's head off for a wrong idea, then I'm not demonstrating that I really do want an open environment, right? So I think the work begins with, this is my ideal environment, and writing it down. How do I, just like Coca-Cola's values, right? They wrote down quality, and then they said what that meant. And integrity, right? They said what that meant. And I think for you, it starts the same way. You're like, oh, I want to, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, because that's one of the benefits of being the founder, that you can write down what you want. But it is so important to write it down so you could define it. You have to name it, right? And then because if you're not really making it clear, how are you going to attract other people to it? Are there any concerns about writing down what you're really looking at and seeing? Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's
Also,
work. It's work, though.
Yeah.
it very much is work. So, great question, Erica. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too.
But one of the things it's really important about shaping the culture of your organization, no matter how small, it really begins to start with how you want to define what I always call is the end result. My approach to problem solving has always been starting at the end and backing into where I want how I want to drive my solution, and where I want to begin, and the steps that I want to take. And what it is that one of the things that I've learned, through operating in that manner, is that in the role of us as founders and as leaders at organizations, no matter how big or how small, it's really how we look to empower others around it. I'm a very hands-off manager, director, or you want to call it business leader in organizations I've had. I've had as many as 80 employees in one of my businesses that I sold. And my job with my leadership team was set the vision for the year, agree on the goals, have them define for me how they were going to meet those goals, tell me what they needed to meet those goals, give them the resources that they required, and then let them go, and then have monthly check-ins about what you've defined and where you're going, as you've defined it, not as how I defined it.
That's good.
Because what I learned, going back from an example I've learned in the military, is that the goal of a good military leader is to create other leaders. And I've applied it in my business practice. So when I run organizations or run programs, run departments, run businesses, my job was to look at talent who may not necessarily have the skills. I can get you trained and skilled up to do the job. The question is, do you have the leadership talent, to build and manage others and inspire them to do the work that's needed? And I think that when we look to hire and recruit, partner, contract all the time, what we have to identify and is approach it with that same mindset is that I'm able to clearly articulate where I'm trying to get to, what I want to see as the end result, and how we can both agree you're going to get me there, especially if I'm retaining you or contracting you to do X. But more importantly, if I'm hiring you to be a part of this, how we get there and benefit together. The worst experiences I've ever had, and I've had my share of failures in life, have been where there is just total opposition to the goals, the vision, and the mission of the business. And what I used to tell people all the time, you hire people for what they know, but you fire them for who they are. And what's happening is that just because somebody had in the technical business I ran, one of my first hires I had, my first separations, fires that I had to make was somebody that was brought in very early on because they had the relationship with the client, they had the required skills, they knew the business. And what happened is that person's perspective, not that they weren't talented, but their perspective of how the business should run and approach and delivery of these products and services was totally different from how the business operated. And then on top of that, he was unwilling to change. There was no compromise. It was like, no, the business needs to change. The management team is wrong. This is how we should be doing it. I know because I used to work in telecom. This is how. And reality is that we terminated him, got the project done, and went on and had 5 years of tremendous growth. And because it's really all about always, bringing a team into a situation, because no one never has all the answers all the time. But you do have a chance for satisfying most of the answers most of the time when you have a team that bring in diverse perspective and approaches about how situations get resolved.
So I'm very clear on what Tom believes, right? And his actions probably match that when he says he's more of a hands-off. Now, people may say that, but then if every 5 minutes they're asking, how's that going? Is it done yet? You see how that's not matching up with what you're saying or what you want. So it's very important to be clear on what, and then behave accordingly, because people just shut down when it doesn't match.
Yeah.
And then just in terms of the way you reward behavior. So you may say, oh, I want, we said subcultures form through rewards. Oh, I want my employees to have work-life balance. But then the person that's always being recognized, oh yeah, he or she stayed till midnight, right? They just burned it up. Oh, thank you. So you see the subliminal messages as opposed to somebody that says, oh, flex time. And, I realize that as long as you get the work done, I don't really care, but you see, those are two different messages. And I've seen a lot of times with military people, right? Not all the time, but they're trained in terms of a certain culture, right? So if you may not behave that way, like Tom is pulling out some very good things from that military type of experience. But if somebody says, you show, 5 minutes early is on time, right? But the person is getting the work done. It's like, but if that's important to you, then that's important to you, but say it, but also behave that way of what you can, just like I said earlier, you have an opportunity to design what you want to design. It's literally a blank slate. And it takes time and work to really say, okay, do I really want this, right? And then experiment and then look at it. Am I behaving this way? As people are shaping your culture and they're watching you, right? And it is difficult to change because they're watching behaviors. They're not, you can write your vision and your mission, but they're really watching your behaviors. The intent of writing your mission and your vision and your values is so you could match them and you could check yourself. But if you're writing them down and you're going to behave the way that's anti that, then that's what people are going to pay attention to. It's not what you say, it's what you do. So you want to make sure what you do matches what you say. So culture describes the behaviors that represent the general operating norms in your environment. Culture is not usually defined as good or bad. Again, that's what I'm saying. It's you design it, right? They just want it to match. They want it to align so it can be consistent. Although aspects of your culture likely support your progress and success and other aspects impede your progress, a norm of accountability will help make your organization successful. a norm of spectacular customer service. Like I see that at Disney. I'm not even like a Disney fan, but I know they seek to wow the customer. Will sell you. So if that's really what you want to set up, you want to set up reward systems where you recognize people that are rewarding the customer and that are engaging employees. Tolerating poor performance or exhibiting a lack of discipline to maintain established processes and systems will impede your success. Unfortunately, I've had to, help with terminating people, and my kids always tease me, oh, people fire themselves. The thing is, what motivates me to implement discipline and progressive or performance management is that I think of the person that's doing a good job. They see when you are ignoring bad performance, the good performance see it, right? So that really frustrates the people that are doing that, what they're supposed to do. And the fact that you're not stepping up in terms of the conflict to handle that it's horrible on an organization when you let poor performers just be out there and everybody's watching you. People are watching. So make sure that you're handling the poor performers correctly. And part of the job is not to terminate everyone. I teach a class what we call performance excellence, where we're taking people from the communication, setting expectations early, where you're coaching them and you're encouraging them to succeed. You're showing them how to succeed, and you are brainstorming. But the end result is that they have to perform, right? But it doesn't start, oh, you're not doing it, you're just out the window. It's a continuum that starts with setting the expectations and making sure that you're brainstorming any obstacles to that expectations, and that you're communicating on a regular basis to make sure that there's no issues, and you're giving space for people to give you that feedback.
Yeah, one point I want to make, Karla, about the point you said about poor performers, and I want to, make sure everybody don't miss that point, because that's really very critical. One of the things that I've seen many times in my past experience, and I've come to use a term called contamination. And what happens is that one poor performing employee, and I'm not necessarily talking about necessarily not only quality of work, but quality of work experience, quality of the environment, the impact they have on others. They're not willing to be part of a team. They have trouble with communication. They don't often get viewed as, not carrying their weight. They're always looking for a shortcut. All those things impact morale. And in a small business, morale is everything. In a small venture, in a startup, and I'm talking about when you get to 4 to 5 to 6 employees, having everybody align in terms, and this goes back to vision mission, everybody aligned and moving in the same direction, allows you to accelerate your growth. Having one person that is really a contaminant, that's not being viewed by the others, as carrying their weight, really is a detriment. And that's something that you have to be willing to recognize very early on and address it very effectively. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to immediately give somebody their walking papers, but often what we want to be able to do is start sitting down and having that conversation with them and reviewing expectations and begin to define and documenting, saying, hey, look, I really value, I want you here. I've made the decision to bring you on because I believe you have something to offer. But these are challenges that I'm seeing we need to address now. And so what I want to be able to do on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, monthly basis, let's sit down and go over your behavior. Let's sit down and go over your performance. Let's sit down and go over your expectation. You have to be able to create, at that point, greater accountability. And that's really, as a leader, you have to now switch to almost your management hat, because you're in a small business, and practice some core management principles to create that. And because what happens is, at the end of the day, the person either adjusts, adapt, and figures out how to bring value and become a positive influence on the environment, or they don't, you know, you then at that point, if it's time for separation, you know, you don't have that anxiety because you felt that you've done everything possible to give the person to give the person the opportunity to prove themselves, like you believe from the door when you either hired them or contracted them to be a part of the team, that they had something to offer.
Yeah.
And no one never likes, you know, terminating anyone, firing somebody. I know I never got any joy out of it, but at the same time too, it becomes really in the best interest of the organization and not necessarily the individual.
Can I say something? Can I just follow up on that? I think it's difficult for us as founders. I know for me, you know, to really do that work because I feel like you're so bogged down with your other responsibilities that you just kind of want someone who kind of gets it and kind of can, just hit the pavement running, and you don't. But we have to understand that a part of building that positive culture is we have to be nuanced with people, and we have to take the time. That's a part of seeing people as humans and respecting them as capable and able to change, right? And not necessarily kind of just judging that, oh, this is not going to work, and moving on really quickly. So I definitely think I have to do that internal work of, saying, okay, I need to do this in order to create this positive working culture that I want to have here, right?
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Very good point, Lola. It doesn't happen any other way. It really does. It doesn't. It really doesn't happen. And we often get tied down to the tactical requirements of any business, and that is the work that has to be done. But reality is, it's always about being strategic and having having good quality people that you can rely on, that you can depend on, that when you go home at night, you know that what you left them with is going to be okay. And that is such a strong, sense of relief that it really allows you as a founder to really do what you do best. And that is be a founder, be a visionary, go out and raise money, go out and bring on new products, bring on new partners. Your job as a founder, once you achieve commercialization and go to market, is not to be tactical, but is to be strategic. And if you're not being strategic as a business, you're always going to flounder. Okay. And the journey is, somebody mentioned it earlier about what the entrepreneur journey is. The entrepreneur journey is about figuring out how to overcome these problems. Because you're going to have them. They're going to be there. You're going to have people problems. You're going to have money problems. You're going to have customer problems. You're going to have market problems. But the question is that how do we solve those problems and get around them and learn from them so that we don't repeat the problems again? Because there are going to be new problems.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Well, that was excellent feedback. I tease my youngest son that there's no elevator to success. You got to take the stairs. And that's really what you talked about. You're like, oh, I got to do the work. I got to go back. And what Tom talked about was like, and that's why I think people ignore the poor performers, because we know you have to go back to management. You have to go back to the meeting monthly and just like, give me your reports. Oh, it's weekly, it's brainstorming, but part of what we're being compensated for is building leaders. They don't come like this. That's where your value is being added. How many leaders are you creating? How many businesses are you creating? But that takes work. And it's not linear. It's not like, oh, if I do this, it's not an equation all the time, because people are at different levels and it requires you. You are a partner in their success, which is your success. We're all beneficiaries of that, but it takes work and it's frustrating a lot of times.
Yeah. Oh, so Karla, anyway, you have 5 minutes, by the way.
Thank you. Okay. So, I mean, really, you see the pattern here, right? That it really is, that's where the heavy work is. It's not just the policies and the procedures and the transactions, right? And, to Tom's point, beginning with the end in mind, what's your exit? I mean, sometimes people will be perfectly happy. Do you plan to be a solopreneur and just work in the business until you retire? I mean, that could be a design, right? Do you plan to sell it, IPO, success? So if you say, no, I want to be a serial entrepreneur, I want to create this business, and then I want to move on. And I've seen some people move too early because they had that vision, but the cake wasn't made yet. They moved, and then their previous business just fell apart because they didn't have the foundation in place. They didn't create that leader that wanted to be there, right? So if you know what you want, then that means you do have, if let's say you want to be that serial entrepreneur, that means there's going to be more time required of you to really build that leader, and sometimes go through other vet and go through some of the stuff that you have to go through. But that's why knowing what is your end game, what do you really want? I mean, do you want legacy? Do you want, so it's only you can answer those questions. But now is the time to start answering those questions, so you just don't get hung up. Like any road will take you there where you don't know where you want to go, right? Know where you want to go so you could design the journey. And my major thing is, failure to focus on people strategy, creating policies, like I said earlier, and ensuring compliance with the federal laws, getting into the tactile, right? That's great. But really focusing on that people strategies, right? Delivering a great experience advances the return on investment in other areas, including employee productivity, company profit, and employee experience. Employers that care about their people gain a reputation as a great place to work, attracting amazing talent to their ranks. Is that what you want? Are you looking for amazing talent?
Yeah.
So that's why you really want to start with the end in mind. That's why you want to focus on, it's more difficult to really hold on to those things because it's not data, it's people. But if you spend time, I love the way Lola put it, like, oh, I have to put more time into that. Lola, that was excellent. That was a great way, because that's really our whole point here, because you're not going to learn everything, but what the exposure is that, oh, I do have responsibility in terms of the success. Is not just knowing the best technical requirements or the best spreadsheets, or it's really what am I going to be? Who am I going to show up as, right? To have someone attracted to want to be in my organization. And none of us are where we want. We should have that goal of improving that, right? So again, at least you're here to imagine a number of, I can't tell you the number of business people, entrepreneurs that I run to, like, oh, I'm good, I've been in business 20 years. Like, that's not taking it to the other level, right? You look at Blockbuster and Netflix. Some of you probably too young to remember Blockbuster, but they're like, oh, we're good. They didn't innovate. Now, I think their last store in Alaska is even done, right? But Netflix, they continue to innovate. Now they've won Oscars and Emmys, and, so that's the same way. That's how I think, right? So again, it's, we can go towards the startup, but again, it's rewinding back to the beginning, right? So have a vision for your future, a mission that defines what you are doing. What problem are you solving? It's not like, oh, people gonna love this. What problem are you solving, right? Values that shape your actions and culture. You wanna create those values. You wanna check yourself, or have an accountability person, or have somebody checking, because to us, it always looks, oh, this makes sense, but you're in your own head. You're not checking, am I really aligning with what I'm putting out here? Strategies that zero in on your key success approaches, and goals and action plans that guide your daily, weekly, and monthly actions. So that's my summary. And I'm glad that, I'm just, thank you for this opportunity. And I just love the interaction and the questions I'm going to stop sharing. So again, thank you so much. I'll turn it back to you, Tom.
Fantastic. Karla, thank you for such great insights. Let me just check the chat here. Do we have any more questions for Karla, either about identifying team partners, building your culture in terms of your organization. He has 28 fingers.
What does that mean, Eric?
Aiming
First
so
one
fast.
comment
he's
about
got
aiming.
hands.
Say that again.
Aiming so fast, he's got 4 hands.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So at this point in time, it is now 6:03. I'd like to turn it over to my partners in crime, Mr. Aaron Sarasta and Eamon Gallagher from Startup Roundtable. I'd like to thank everybody tonight for attending this evening's workshop, and we'll see you next week.